camel, a Samburu guide, and a Chinese man trekking hundreds of kilometers through Kenya's Rift Valley. This is not the setup for a movie. It is a real journey that later became a book called The Camel Diaries. This is China-Africa Talk. I'm Gao Junya. For years, Chinese photographer Qi Lin traveled across Kenya's Turkana region, first as a project manager, then as a traveler searching for something deeper. Eventually, he left behind city life for long desert walks with his camel, Kipeshi, and Samburu guide, Martin. A journey that challenged not only his physical limits, but also his understanding of poverty, happiness, and what it means to live a meaningful life. At a time when China-Africa exchanges are deepening, Qi Lin's journey offers a more personal glimpse into how ordinary people from the two sides are getting to know each other. I sat down with Qi Lin to hear more of his experiences. Also joining the conversation was my good friend, Monica Cheru, chairperson of the Zimbabwe Writers Association, who brought an African perspective to the discussion. Qi Lin, we just can't wait to know more of your book.
Thank you.
Tell us more about it. What's it about?
Yeah, so the name is The Camel Diaries, and it talk about my trip with my camel, with my mentor and guide, Martin, three of us, walking from the southern part of Kenya along the Great Rift Valley, 700 kilometers, all the way to the north. That's the trip, yeah.
So why is Camel Diaries? Because, I worked in Africa for several years. I don't think camel is a typical animal of Africa, at least where I stayed. We would think of big five, or even zebra, and giraffe. Why camel?
Yeah, actually, camel is a big part of the nomad community in Africa, especially East Africa. For example, a quarter of the camel population is in Somalia, and another quarter is in Kenya and Ethiopia. So why camel? It's like my camel, his name is Kipesh, and every time we have to follow him. He's the boss. So he walk, we walk. He rest, we rest. Yeah, and then this is the Camel Diary, because in the northern part of Kenya, is mainly arid area and savanna, and later is the desert. So camel is very essential for the trip, and it is the only animal could survive the trip with us. Yeah.
And you mentioned its name is Kipeshi?
Kipesh.
Kipesh. And
Yes.
what kind of language is that, and what does it mean?
Yeah, so Kipesh is a Samburu name. And because my herder and the region is we are passing through is called Samburu. Of course, it has a Samburu name, and also Kipesh has a Chinese name, Qi Pei Shi. Qi is my family name, and my name is Qi Lin. Yeah, so Pei Shi means it's as strong as a stone, but also energetic like water.
Okay.
But sometimes it's too strong and too energetic. Yeah.
Is this your very first book?
Yes, that's my first book. Yeah.
So what made you to make the decision to write it down into a book, write your experience into a book?
So actually, to publish as a book, it was never my plan. At the very beginning, you see, like every day I just post it in the Chinese WeChat. First is to write down what I did for the day, and most important is just to tell my families and my friends I'm still alive. If you don't see my post for 2 days, better call the police, and you can follow my post. Okay, where is this guy? Where is he hiding to? Yeah, just like that. But that was like 5 years ago, and later, more and more people see my post, and they encourage me, because I kind of show a different perspective of Africa, very different from the main media, very different from the social media. So they asked me, you have to publish it. So I'm lucky that I could find a publisher, and now we have the book. Yeah.
I actually like that aspect of the different perspective. But what made you decide to take this journey? Because I understand you're in
Yeah.
Nairobi, you're modern city, life is
Exactly.
good.
Yes, yes.
Then you decide to go into one of the most maybe difficult terrains
Yeah.
in Africa. Why?
Yeah. So first, personally speaking, for the past 10 years, every year I spent 1 or 2 months in the field, sleeping not under the roof, but under the sky, under the Milky Way. So that's my life. And that year, it just happened, like, okay, I want to go to Turkana. Why Turkana? Because I've been there before. The first time I went to Turkana, it is in 2014. During that time, I was a project manager, managing vocational training project in Kenya, working with Ministry of Education. So during that time, I was doing the site survey, traveling all around Kenya. And then that's when I first went to Turkana. And it's very different. As you say, it's so difficult. Like it's such a remote area, and I have to travel for several days driving myself to reach that location. At the beginning, I'm a tourist. You see, oh, that's very interesting. That's it. And later, I revisited in 2016. During that time, I fly to Lodwar, which is the height of the county of Turkana, and I visited Kakuma refugee camp. And during that time, that was the year, the head title, like the refugee of Europe. And then I see another group of refugees. They are from South Sudan. And during that time, South Sudan has been going through a horrible civil war, and a lot of refugees flood into that area. And then I see a different part, like the different refugee. And then later I see the local people. They are even like outside of the radar, like from the refugee. It's called Turkana people. So that year, back to the book, I decided, okay, I was driving there, and then I fly to there. I was like tourist. This time I decided to walk with a camel, like a local people, to go to that region.
Then you put so much of your own personal life into the book. You openly talk about the experiences, the loss you are working on getting through, and things that have been happening to you in 10 years. Don't you feel a bit exposed? Because as a writer, like you think, where do you draw the line? How do you do that?
So actually, as I told you, like I never thought about I could be a writer. I never thought about that I could publish my personal diary to the public. But so I do not have this mindset of writer. So I do not know how to draw the line. Okay, which part is personal, which part I could show it to others. But what I know is a lot of this personal experience, is really contributed. It's the foundation of what we say, the history, the relationship between China and Africa. China-Africa relations, it's not only the macro side, it's the project, the history, but also is building by the individual like me, like you, like these personal talkings. We have a name, Monica, Lin, right? I think I want to give a new perspective to others, like here is not a group of Africans, a group of Chinese. Here is Monica, here is Lin. We are different, and we are here for different reasons. Yeah.
Monica, besides Qi Lin, do you know any other Chinese people that have been chronicling about Africa? Is it rare, to meet someone in person? Yeah.
The other book that I have read and enjoyed by a Chinese on Africa was written by Li Xinfeng, Professor Li Xinfeng. He tracked the Chinese descendants of Kenya again.
Okay.
Yes, so it looks, yes. And I also like exactly the same aspect. It's not a dry academic book. It's a personal story. It's a personal journey. And you're not just seeing the people that he's interacting with. You're also seeing the person.
Yeah.
And otherwise, most of the writing, it's really, academic numbers, figures, so many bridges built, so many thousands. it's not something you can relate to. So I definitely get what you're saying. And I think maybe we need more books like this to connect us as people, not at international level, at government level, as human beings.
Actually, Professor Li Xingfeng, I think he's now retired. He used to head the African Institute of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. You know,
Exactly.
he's from a more academic background.
Uh-huh.
He's written a book that interested you.
No, he's also a poet. So
Wow.
I think it comes through in his book. It's got a beautiful cadence. It's, believe me, it's not dry academic.
I'm going to read it. Yeah.
You must.
We need
You really have to.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And what about Zimbabwe? Have you noticed any Chinese people writing stories about Zimbabwe? And or do you wish to see more?
I wish to see more. I don't think I've actually come across, like just a story. I've seen a few academic papers, a few of those, but like a story like this one by a Chinese person on Zimbabwe, I don't think so. But there are a lot of beautiful stories.
Yeah, I think we need to take more efforts in translation as well, because personally, I know some people, they did write books about them.
But they're
and
in Chinese.
In Chinese, and they're quite popular.
Yeah, so I think we need to work together on issues of translation and maybe even co-writing, so that, like for example, I think Lin's book is targeted at Chinese people, right, to understand Africa. So maybe even if it's translated, maybe African audiences may not find the same resonance. So maybe, but if it's between a Chinese writer and an African writer, it means all tastes are catered for.
Yes, I think, Qi Lin, you've already talked about why you choose to go to Turkana region, but why it's so special? Because Africa is so huge, right?
Yeah.
There are so many different routes and destinations.
Yeah. So I think I have to talk about why Africa. Yeah. So actually, my grandfather, he was one of the medical doctors, which was sent to Somalia more than 50 years ago. It was 1969. And when I was young, and he always talked about, the fascinating stories about Somalia. And also, so Africa is so big, I cannot talk about us as a whole. And I only visit around 10 countries in Africa. And what I know is especially the East Africa. And back to Turkana. Turkana, of course, I talk about is you feel different. And also in the same time, is the human cradle. It's the cradle of the human, it's the cradle of mankind. 1984, the researchers, they discovered the most complete skeleton of all the human species, the Turkana boy. And second, the location is very interesting. So it's in the northwest part of Kenya, neighborhood of Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Uganda. So the culture and everything is so diversified, and that's really interests me. Yeah, and also the Turkana Lake is the biggest desert lake in the world.
Monica, you've been to Kenya. Have you been to Turkana region? As lucky as Qi Lin?
Well, not quite as inside as he's gone. Okay, I'll confess. Only as far as nice tourist resorts on the edges of the region.
Okay, before we go to that, I would like you to assume, what kind of obstacles or challenges Qi Lin has met during his trip.
Okay.
Because you said it's different, right? Yeah. What would you assume?
It's different. Okay, the moment you say a camel, which you don't know because you were in Zim, it's definitely going to be desert. So, and it means you've got a lot of walking. It means water is going to be at the center of the story because you're always looking for the next water source. And also, I think you are going to meet people who maybe really live from day to day and maybe have to make some very hard decisions for survival. I think you're also going to meet people whose perception of life is different from yours. And maybe you discover that some of the things that we value in our lives are totally useless. Like right now, we are practically connected to our mobile phones. But when you get to a place with no reception, you suddenly find you can throw it away, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did Monica capture it right?
Yes, yes, that's one of the big part. No signal, no cell phone, no worries.
What about water?
Yeah, water actually, so not only water, but it's really day-to-day survival, because of course without water you cannot survive. Of course they have snakes and other animals, and they have, out of sudden there's rain, yes. Even in the desert they have rain, and it's huge rain. It's very dangerous because it can cause the flash flood.
Wow.
Yeah, so day to day I have to learn how to survive. And then I had to really mention about Martin. You see, people say, okay, you hire a guide and then he's taking you there. No, it's not true. Of course, okay, I hired him as a guide, but he is my mentor. He teach me how to become a human. What kind of human is like really the starting point of our human as a human being? Like a hunter-gatherer, nomad, and the survival skill in the field. He teach me how to read the cloud, how to read the grass, and how to smell the signs of dangers. And at the beginning, I am his student. I cannot help, I just like watching. Okay, how to do that. And then later, I am his helper. So while he's packing the camel, I can contribute, tighten up the ropes. And then eventually, okay, I graduate. I'm his partner, we can take turns to handle the camel equipage, and we can take turns to lead the road.
So Martin is actually from the Samburu
tribe. Samburu tribe, yes. Yeah.
Can you just tell us more about this tribe? Because I think it's quite a minority in Kenya, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they do have these skills living in the wild.
Exactly, yeah. So most of the people, especially Chinese, we go there, we see the Great Migration, the Mara River, and then we heard about Masai Mara.
Yes.
Masai people.
Exactly, the Masai people. So the Samburu people and the Masai people, they are really close group, and they all belongs to Nilotic. Yeah, Nilotic, they also have Turkana and others. So this group of people, usually they're herders, they're nomads, and they really know how to survive and how to live a good life and how to make a harmony with the local environment. Yeah. So Martin, he is from Samburu. Of course, traditionally, camel is not a main animal of Samburu, but because nowadays the global climate change, the weather of Kenya, the weather of the whole Africa is become unpredictable. And some days it's become more drought and more rain. So camel can't survive in the harsh environment. So the local people are adopting from the goat, sheep, into camel. So their lifestyle is also changing. Yeah.
So when a foreigner writes about Africa, there's always the temptation to produce poverty porn, even for the media and everything.
Yes.
But I note that you really did avoid that. How did you do that?
Yeah.
Because you tell the story without giving the impression that you are projecting poverty. You are just telling people stories. How did you manage to do that? It's really admirable.
Okay, so I'm nothing special. At the first time I went to Africa, I'm full of stereotypes about Africa. Okay, this place must be hot, must be have a conflict, must be have all kinds of weird disease. But when I arrived there, nothing I was learned, nothing I was taught. It's very different. So after I lived for a few years, little by little, okay, I see the truth. Because misunderstanding is sometimes, as a Chinese, we don't speak English, and we didn't travel for the internationalize of Chinese is, I think it's only like after 80s or 90s. I'm like one of the lucky group that who can visit Africa. Yeah, and also you talk about poverty. Yeah, how do we define the word poverty? If we define this word by how much money we have, China is still a developing country. Of course, you see China, oh, we are so strong. But per capita, we are not as rich as the Western people. But when I go to Africa, when I'm in the field, I'm with the Kenya people, you see, they are happy. They are happier than me. I have a vehicle. They have a camel. You know, a vehicle is more expensive than a camel, but they are happier. Their spirit, their heart is richer than me. So I'm poor, they are rich. Yeah.
I think you brought up a very interesting topic because several of my African friends, they did tell me, how do you define poverty? They would think a local person with not a camel, but with a cow, they're rich. You know, cow is their bank. It's not necessarily you have a certain balance in your typical bank card. It's just, you know, you're with the nature, you have your stock, then you're rich. You're not that, you know, poor as defined by the Western standards or the so-called.
I think was it the Mali president? He at the 77th UN. He did quite a hard-hitting speech where he said, part of Africa's poverty is a construct because we have a big economy that is not captured in dollars. Like for the people you see, they might exchange things with no money changing hands. So how do you capture that economy before you decide that this person is poor? So I agree with you that the definition of poverty is quite complex, and I'm happy that your writing picks that up and you choose to talk about people and relationships and the things that make us human beings. I really liked that part.
I'm just also curious to know more about the Africa you observed. You know, we can tell from what you've discussed so far, you know, they're happy. You know, they know the nature. They're then expert, right? They can just read the cloud and they can tell the rain. So what else? What other parts of Africa that you have observed and you want to bring it to the Chinese readers?
And also, I can relate it to this question back to the poverty. It's like not the poverty itself, but what is the definition of all of these words? The poverty, the happiness, even knowledge. These days, we associate knowledge, especially, you know, talking about AI, this large language model. We just put too much attention about language. We think, okay, all the knowledge is from language. I think it's different. You know, in Africa, you know, in Kenya, it's such big continent. You know, it's very different. For example, from Kenya to Zimbabwe, the distance is like from Beijing to Tokyo. We don't say, okay, China and Japan is the same.
No.
Yeah, and also even within Kenya, they have different ethnic groups. They're speaking very different language. It's so different. It's like you are speaking Mandarin or Russian, that kind of difference. So they have a lot of diversified knowledge, wisdoms that only I be there, I learn from their daily life. For example, in Kenya, they have a word, halaka halaka, hakuna baraka, which means if you travel too fast, there's no blessings. I think we used to have this, you know, in the old days, but this one nowadays is everything is like we want to do it fast, we want to do it cheap, right? We want to do it good, but what is good? If you are so frustrated, you know, like if you left your families, you know, like for so long and you are working on certain project, is this good? Yeah, maybe for money-wise, it's good.
But it's a human being.
Exactly. So one of the chapter of my book is become a human. Yeah, because I relearned how to become human from Africa, from Kenya.
There's also something else that a lot of foreigners face, and I think especially now the Chinese in Africa, the burden of responsibility, where certain maybe sections of the society, just by being present as a Chinese in Africa, they expect you to take responsibility for the issues around them, job creation, whatever, development, that sort of thing. So how do you handle that?
I think first, I feel privileged that, well, I can do a lot of things, you know. Of course, I try to meet up your expectations, but also, I'm just a normal human being. I'm just running a normal company, like the local company.
Yes.
It's the same. And what is the local company? The first is to survive, because only after you survive, you can transfer the technology from China to Africa, and then you can employ more peoples from the locally, and also generate more revenues to the government. And I think running a business is the best charity, one of the best charity, because you're from Zimbabwe, you know the book, That Date, and it's really clearly said about, there's so many charities and aid. It's not only, they're not working, but they have a negative impact. So as long as we work together as a partner equally, we have a better future, because I already see that. In Kenya, so the first time I went to Kenya is 2011, and now it's been 15 years. Every year, every time I went to Kenya, it's different. It's developing so fast. I feel it is like in the early 90s of China, things are changing, the urbanization, the cities expanding. Of course, there are some problems, but I think when things are developing, they have to go through certain phases.
Okay.
But in the same time, we should have our faith to believe the future is there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Getting to the central issue or theme in the book, the camel. This sounds like a whole personality. Do you want to share a few stories about Kipeshi?
Yeah.
You said you were guided by him. You walk when he wants to walk, and you rest when he wants to walk, to rest.
Yes, so my Kipesh, the first time I met him, he was only 3 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 years old boy is really a teenager. Teenager, they do not listen to anyone. So as my Kipesh, at the very beginning, it's really give us headache. I ask him to go right, he goes to the left. I ask him to go, he stops. And at the very beginning, he even kicked me once. Ooh. Yeah. But later, after we spent time together, and he started to know I'm not only abusing him, but also I'm taking care of him to remove the pest from him and to help him to find water and the food. We are symbiosis, we survive together. I am his partner too. So later we become smooth. But the personality, he's still very talkative from the very beginning, a camel talks like that. So it's very talkative, grow-up man now.
How long can camels live up to? How many years?
If the camel living in domestic, for example, in the zoo, they can live up to 40 or 50 years. But if the camel is living in the wild, even with the herder, because they eat very strong vegetations, for example, acacia, the thorn, is very hard. After 15, 20 years, the teeth of the camel will be worn out, and they will start to eating very slow. And by they cannot get enough nutrition, and then they are weak and they stay behind the group, and they will be prey by the lion or leopard and other animals. Yeah.
Where did your camel end up because you finished your trip, right? And now you're in China, you're talking to us. Where is your partner, your friend?
Yes. Luckily, even though in the end of the trip, Kipesh got robbed by the bandit twice. Not once, but twice. As I said, he has such a character. He do not listen to people. He do not listen to me or the bandits. So after he was captured the bandit, he ran away. I don't listen to you guys, I'm me, Kipesh. So he ran away twice. And that's the end of my trip. And I said, okay, I cannot continue, it's too dangerous. So very lucky, so my friend, he sent me a pickup to carry the camel all the way back to his hometown. And now he's living happily with another more than 100 camels in the savannah.
And based on what you said, I think the camel is living, carefree, and Martin as well. I'm just very curious to know, is there anything that from the so-called modern world that you would like to bring to Martin? Because you've been staying along and you learned a lot from Martin. What about your experiences? What kind of things you would share with Martin?
Yeah, so Kenya, Africa is changing very fast. Of course, China, we have a lot of old customs. It's the same as the Samburu people. They are used to be the warriors, the Moran, the herders, but their culture are bound by the land, are bound by the lifestyle, by the animal. But nowadays, weather is changing, the urbanization, the development is happening, and the population is growing very fast. For example, 15 years ago, I think the population of Kenya is only around 40 million. Now it's more than 50. So their lifestyle is also changing. So what I could do is I can demonstrate, what is the good and bad part living as a city boy. So it is his own choice. Does he want to stay the way he is, or he want to be urbanized like us? Yeah, it's his own choice. Yeah.
You spoke about the bandits. I'm wondering, during your journey, what kind of challenges have you met besides the flood you talk about? And is there any moment or many moments that you would like to give up, maybe?
Yeah. So, for example, we have a camel, and we are travel through the desert, and it's Chalbi Desert. Chalbi Desert is the biggest desert in Kenya, and there's nobody living there. Maybe on the boundary they have some villages, but across the desert there's no one. So before we started the journey, we have to carry the food for Kipesh on his back. Also, we carried 50 liters of water. That's the maximum a camel can carry, because he can carry up to 70 kilograms. So 50 liter, we can survive for 3 days, because you need a lot of water. Yeah. And after 3 days, we have to find another water source. So we run out of water one day, and it's really desperate. You see no one in front. And of course, by that point, I want to give up. I have to give up, but I cannot. Because if I give up now, finish, you'll die here. So Martin encouraged me, and I encouraged Martin. And with my strong Kipesh, we continue walking for another half day. We reached this oasis in the middle of the desert. We survived. We are so happy. Yeah, that's the moment, I really feel to be alive. It's so good. And a cup of clean water, it is so difficult to get. And, we have to appreciate everything. We shouldn't take the things as granted, the water, the food, the peaceful life we have. Because if you look back the thousands of years of human history, how long do we have peaceful moments? Almost none. We are living in the most peaceful, rare history of human history. So we have to cherish it.
And you do have cell phone signals during your trip, because you were saying you were updating on your WeChat moments.
Exactly. So to my surprise, I thought, okay, I'm going to the desert. I'm going to the remote area of Africa, but they have infrastructures there. And not only we have signal. So one interesting knowledge, who have one of the earliest, the cell phone bank. It's not America, it's not China, it's Kenya. I think since 20 years ago, they have this M-Pesa. They're already using cell phone to transfer money. Yeah, it's really amazing. So even though I'm in the desert, I have signals. Yeah. Sometimes it kind of like make me difficult to dealing with the reality. I'm here, but I'm still connected with the world. Yeah.
You spoke about snakes. Did you have any close encounters?
Or scorpions?
I passed by one snake only. Luckily, it's not poisonous, but they do have this. Most dangerous snake there is puff adder. So it's like it's a viper. So it's fat, short, very aggressive. It's not the most poisonous snake. I think the most poisonous snake is a black mamba, something like that. Yeah, but they bite a lot and it's very aggressive. And the color of puff adder is like the sun. If you do not pay attention, you will meet the snake.
Step on it.
Step on it, yeah. And that's one of the reasons. Usually, if I go to the field, I choose to wear this boot, 8-inch, to protect my ankle. Yeah.
Good idea, Monica. I think I remember that once a camel was introduced to Zimbabwe's lion park, it created quite a big scene because it's not commonly found there. It's not typical. And but for you, if you want to recommend a route or a certain place for Qi Lin to explore in Zimbabwe, where would you recommend?
Okay, I think Zimbabwe, you might not quite have the same experience. Because seriously, remote is relative. And I think finding a region like Lake Turkana is a bit difficult in Zimbabwe. So I would recommend that maybe you do the northern part of the country, the Mbire district, and Mount Darwin, Manapus. It's more about what you would see there rather than, like the really difficult experience. You've got the dinosaur footprints, you've got the fossilized forests, and then you've got the Roma people. A few people have written about them. I don't know if you've come across them with their 2 toes, but it's not remote in the sense of remote, but I think you might like the experience. Well, make sure you've got something for the lions. They occasionally take a bite of people on that side.
Okay.
But I think the most dangerous animal is the hippo that kills more people in a year than the lions actually. Yeah, it's more aggressive. But also, I think it would be interesting to see a book that does not depict the wild and rural Africa, but this development that you're talking about. For example, in Africa, a lot of people don't realize that we've got over 200 millionaires from Africa. These are just the officially recognized ones, like your Strive Masiwas and Aliko Dangotes, but you've got quite a number whose wealth is not captured by Forbes. And I think it would be interesting for the Chinese, even from a business perspective. Like you look at tourism, China's got beautiful places, but a lot of Africans don't know about it. They just go to Dubai, they do Disneyland, the sort of stuff. So I would really like to read different stories by a foreigner about Africa, and not the rural and not nature, other things. Mm-hmm.
I think menopause is one of the world's cultural heritage. And if you're there, I don't think you can stay online, really, right? The signal, is it getting better this year?
It's getting a bit better.
A bit better, okay.
I mean, since they licensed Starlink, I think practically everywhere now is connected. And I think we've got another satellite coming in through Econet. So
you can keep updating on your WeChat moments.
Yes.
Yeah, I think really you get the point. Even I published this book about this kind of like adventure in Africa. Actually, this kind of story has already been told, like all the time. This Western adventure, like go to some place, do some stuff. But you see, like for me, it's like adventure. But for the people there, it's just a daily life. And what I'm interested in, of course, I don't deny a part of it is, is to experience these extraordinary sceneries and wonders. But also, more important, is the people. This book I talk about is really, this time I go there, I am accepted by the people there. We eat the food from the same place. We're sleeping under the same tent. Yes, and I'm experiencing their daily life, happiness and struggle in the same way. So before I was a project manager and I quit my job, become a freelancing photographer. Yeah, I'm a more photographer than a writer. Why is it? 2015, my grandfather, he passed away. And it is because of him, put a seed in my childhood. I want to go to Africa. And then I try to collect all his, whatever left. Only 3 photos. Only 3 photos. He was in Mogadishu, in Somalia. And the story of the whole generation just lost. Yeah, it's disappeared. So when I was in Kenya working as a project manager, I was taking photos of my daily project, my work, my life, my friendship with Kenyan people. I didn't realize how important it is. Only after like my grandfather, he passed away, I realized, okay, if I do not tell the story, no one can tell. So,
no, but that connection comes through in your writing, the way you treat the subject. You can tell it's from the heart. And even in the photographs that are contained in the book, it's really, you can tell that you are feeling this place. And I hope you do a publication of the rest of the photos, because there are just a few in the book. I don't know how many?
It's around 10,000 photos and spreading like 10 years of work. Yeah.
But in the book, how many did you put? 30. Definitely not 10,000.
only 30 photos. Yeah, okay. It's like a writing book. Yeah.
And then, are you planning to translate this into English?
For sure. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's within our plan. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think we've been seeing growing exchanges between China and Africa. With 3 of us, we've been benefiting from such exchange programs. And so I'm wondering, with this growing exchanges, what kind of Africa would you like to bring to China? You want to tell the Chinese audiences?
Yeah. So when I was in Kenya 2011, most of the Chinese are doing construction and also trading. And later, around 2016, I see people started to put factories, maybe like the labor-intensive factories, and also some factory related to infrastructure. And nowadays, I see more and more high-tech like connections between China and Africa. You see, these days we talk about the Chat GPT, and most of people, we don't know there's a big connection between the Chat GPT and the Kenya people. It's the Kenya engineers labor the world to train this large language model. So they're already there. Yes, I think that's the future. There are so many ways and I'm still seeing it's growing. Yeah, so I have the confidence. Yeah.
What about you, Monica? You've been here in China for many times, and what kind of stories of China would you like to bring to Zimbabwe and to the broader Africa?
Okay, I think the first one is that there's no such human being called a Chinese, where you just like, the Chinese are like A, B, C, D, that Chinese people are individuals and they are diverse. So you can meet a very unpleasant person who is an African or a very unpleasant person who's a Chinese, but they don't define Africans or Chinese. So we should all take time to know each other as human beings and then have an opinion of the individual. I mean, 1.4 billion people?
Exactly.
You cannot define them through one individual.
No.
Then also the fact that China is complex. It's got highly developed parts. It's got parts that are still being brought forward. And that's, as far as I can see, there is a lot that connects us rather than what divides us. You break it down to simple things: respect for elders, the need for identity as part of your culture. All these are things that when you look at it, we are quite similar. Mm-hmm. But because we don't take enough time to know each other as human beings, we are divided when we shouldn't be. Yeah, I think that's what I would want to tell Africa.
Yes, you have experiences actually visiting China, but we do have most of the Africans, they haven't been to China. But with this growing China-Africa cooperation, we've seen a lot of projects. They've been implemented in Africa in local communities, like what Qi Lin has been doing, vocational training, things like that. So have you noticed the changes of perceptions of local people when it comes to the Chinese community, the China-Africa cooperation?
I think the perceptions change when people have a real connection with the Chinese in their community. But on a whole, I think there's still a lot of work from both sides. And I think it's important for every Chinese person in Africa to realize that they're an ambassador of China. Whether they are connected to the government officially or not, or as private individuals, that whatever they do has an impact on the rest of the Chinese community in Africa. And it's also the same with Africans interacting with the Chinese. We should also realize that in every interaction, we are shaping the perception of the Chinese of Africans. So, yeah, I think there's still a lot of work for all of us.
Before we go, Monica has already recommended you some place in Zimbabwe, but we are still curious to know your next plans. Where would you like to go? And are you still going to travel in Africa or any other regions in the world?
Of course, back to Africa. And I've been so many times to Turkana, and I still want to go back again. And the first time driving there, later flying, take a camel, even I travel with a motorbike once. And this was like 5 years ago, and this time if I want to go back again, I want to bring a robot. Robot is like a baby of mankind. I want to bring this baby to our hometown, to Turkana. I think that will be very interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also like the mind of this baby is AI. Mm-hmm. I wonder if AI sees the birthplace of mankind, maybe he can learn something.
And Martin is going to join you for your next trip?
Maybe, yes.
We
Maybe
hope
also
so.
Kipesh, yeah.
What about you, Monica? I know you've been writing a book about China, right? So can you just give us a preview of it? What's it about?
Okay, it's about China and Africa, some of the issues we've been discussing. I've taken a few case studies of bad relations between the Chinese and the Africans and try to understand how did we get to here, and also suggest a few solutions. Hopefully it will be out in August. I've had a few issues with the editors. I think they've been trying to fit it into a box, which is not what I set out to do. But hopefully that's resolved now.
It is true that China-Africa relations are built through trade, major projects, and diplomacy, but also through ordinary people who are willing to know one another, explore each other's worlds, and listen to one another's stories. That's it for this edition of China-Africa Talk. You can find us on major podcast platforms and on Substack. Just search China-Africa Talk. I'm Gao Junya. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.